Hello, my name is Max Fonarov. I'm a founding principal of Sorbus Advisors, San Francisco Bay Area-based valuation advisory firm. In this video, we'll talk about how to use our term sheet value calculator you can find on our website www.sorbusadvisors.com. As a matter of precaution, this calculator is provided for illustration purposes only, and we take no responsibility for inaccurate or incomplete calculations that result from using this template. The process of financing of startup ventures is complex, and complexity comes from numerous rounds of financing that the company has to go through with different investors. Each round of financing is typically an equity financing and is associated with a set of various features or rights that is attributed to or given to different equity holders. The term sheet calculator provides an illustration where you can see how the participation features or liquidation preferences associated with different types of preferred shares may affect the value of common shares or even value of common stock options. So as we look at this calculator, you see that this section, the gray section, your inputs, is where you input the assumptions, and after pressing run, the part on the right hand side gets populated with calculations and the values of stocks. The first part of this table is equity value, and the equity value is the value of your company's equity. In a startup situation, it's typically just equity that finances the company, no debt. The value of the equity has to include the cash that the company receives with the round of financing. So it's a post-money valuation that goes into this calculation. Second, you have to input the industry, and you'll see that the industry selections here primarily technology-based industries. However, you can use this calculator just as well for the industries that are outside of technology. Time to liquidity. Liquidity in this case is the event where a significant change in a company's fortunes take place, or it's a significant recapitalization. So liquidity event could be considered here as to be a new round of financing. It could be obviously sale or liquidation of the company, and liquidity event could be any significant business milestone that the company is going to experience in the next few years. So therefore, it's important here to distinguish the intentions of everybody to stay with this business for as long as it lasts, and hopefully the business is successful. But the liquidity event here is the event of a reset. It's the next milestone, and so typically for a startup company, that's something that does happen within the next 3 years. The bottom portion of the inputs here is a little more deterministic, and so it includes the specific capital structure attributes and the attributes associated with preferred shares. Here again, we're using Series A preferred financing. That's what it's typically called, but there are other names that could be used. So number of shares for preferred stock, common stock, and stock options, the number of shares is the number of shares that's actually outstanding on the day of the valuation. So it's not the number of shares that's generally approved for grant, or it's not number of shares that's available there to issue. It's something that's outstanding on the day when we're trying to estimate the value of our stock. For preferred shares, liquidation preference is the first input that goes in there. Liquidation preference, typically, it's the price that investors pay for their preferred shares. It is also the amount of money that they guaranteed to receive before common stockholders receive any kind of distribution from this company. So if we talk about the scenario where the company is being sold, the preferred shares act almost like debt, where the preferred shareholders, their liquidation preference has to get paid off, and then the remainder of the distribution is being distributed according to other rights given to preferred shares. A participation feature is this other right, which is very important. And so the participation feature, what it allows to do, and so let's switch it to yes here, participation feature allows preferred shareholders to claim their liquidation preference, so claim their $3, and then come back and participate in the pro rata distribution of the proceeds that remain after they've been paid those $3. So in other words, they participate in both the upfront payoff of their liquidation preference and then what remains together with common shareholders. This is obviously a very favorable feature for preferred shareholders and not so favorable for common shareholders. Therefore, what we do see sometimes, not as much for very early financing rounds, but for later financing rounds, if preferred shares are given participation feature, then there is a cap associated with it. So in other words, the cap is expressed as a multiple of liquidation preference typically, and that's it limits the amount of money that preferred shareholders can receive as a result of this arrangement. In this case, preferred shareholders can participate, but they cannot get more than $6 payout from this company. It's $3 times 2, so that's the limit to how much they can get. In this particular case, they still have a choice, and in most cases, preferred shareholders are convertible to common. In other words, they can convert to common as they please. If $6 seem to be low, and if the company is truly very successful, and they'd rather have common shares instead of preferred shares, then they can convert. They can forego their liquidation rights, liquidation preferences, and participate as common, but they do have to make that choice after they reach their participation cap. So common stock, we input number of shares. Common stock options, there are usually many grants of stock options. This calculation can actually combine all of them, and so we include the total number of stock options outstanding there, and the strike price would be a weighted average strike price among all those grants. So once this part is populated, we press run, and you see that on the left hand side the output gets populated. So for this type of inputs, we'll see that the estimated value of preferred share is about $7 and a penny. The common stock is worth $5.41, and the common stock option is worth $3.79. So note how the value of preferred share and common share is not equal. And so when we talk about the dilution as a result of financing, much too often we don't see the discussion go beyond just considering dilution based on the count of shares. So just fully diluted number of shares are considered, and the dilution is viewed as based on the count of shares. But really, preferred shareholders do get more value for each share, and so in terms of the dilution by value, there is a greater proportion of value given up in this round of financing than fully diluted type of calculation leads you to believe. You can use this calculator as an example to test how different features work here and what's important. So for example, we said participation is important, and so participation is favorable to preferred shareholders. If we switch participation here to no, and participation, when there is no participation, then common shareholders are in more favorable position. preferred shareholders is in a relatively less favorable position, we would like to estimate how much value gets redistributed between those two shares. And so when we run, typically what we would have to expect here is that this 0.77x value would have to increase as a result of this switch. So we run it, and indeed the value of common stock becomes a lot closer to the value of preferred shares, and by a significant amount. So it's important to keep in mind that those features are important and they should be well thought through in the process of raising financing. With that, we welcome you to visit our website, and you will find also the instructions on how to use the calculator in the PDF format. Certainly feel free to contact us if you have any questions about the calculator. And thank you very much.